control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains that act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are, reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Let your experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for listening in on spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, and now on Revolution Radio. We become your talk show of the night as we broadcast out of Uncle Jimbo's cabin in the Great White North, living and live on this Wednesday night, early Thursday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we broadcast 7 hours, make that 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. We want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to the cryptid, conspiracy, paranormal, ufological, and so much more. If you're on the Spreaker side and you like our music, head to Spaced Out Radio's website, spacedoutradio.com. You'll hear the guitar god himself, former Guns N' Roses lead guitarist Ron Bumblefoot Thal. Check out a couple of his music videos by clicking on the Bumblefoot banner. You can also follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, we say hi, how are you to everyone in the Revolution Radio chat room, on the High Plains Talk Radio Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans on Facebook, Euphoria Chronicles, Chronicles of the Unknown, TCPS, Forest Moon Paranormal, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. If you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, what are you waiting for? It's only $5 a month, and with that, your name gets entered into monthly prize draws, access to private group interviews, access to a special section on our website, and much more. Unlike the other guys who just give you access to their archives, not us. We're giving back to you. While at spacedoutradio.com, you can go read our latest blogs on the blog section, like mine, Where Does Time Go? And check out Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest in weird news. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. We have the new Agora newspaper. It's the official newspaper of this show. And the iTunes app Spirit Storybox. It's the official ghost hunting app of SOR. Remember, if you're a listener to Revolution Radio, it is the largest non-profit online radio station going. It's kicking butt. That's why we at Spaced Out Radio joined up with them. Take the time to visit freedomslips.com and do us a favor. They're non-profit, so if you can, donate today. The second Wednesday of every month means it's time for the crypto guru, Ronald Murphy, to join us once again for his monthly segment on everything paranormal and cryptid. Ronald Murphy is an extremely talented writer who, over the past 12 months, has really taken off as an expert cryptid writer. His latest series, the On series, has him talking about books on mermaid, dogman, Bigfoot, and now ghosts to be released in the early fall. It's been an amazing journey for Ron, who speaks and writes so eloquently that everyone can understand the picture of words he's trying to paint. Tonight on SOR, we will hit at you with your questions on everything from fairies to ghosts. We are also focusing on giants tonight. There's a big mystery surrounding giant skeletons and Nephilim going back centuries. We're digging into it, no pun intended. Do they still roam around? Is Bigfoot one of them? These are the questions the crypto guru loves as we welcome Ronald Murphy into Spaced Out Radio Land. You can find all of his books on Amazon. Crypto guru, good to have you back. How you been, brother?
Oh, I've been fantastic, just patiently waiting for the second Wednesday of every month. It's a shame that there's only one second Wednesday of every month because I so enjoy interacting with you and these fine audience members that you have, the best in the business.
Well, you know what? We're adding to it. We just this past Monday joined Revolution Radio, and to bring them into the Spaced Out Radio family is very important because we have a long list of dedicated listeners who are here every night doing what we're doing. They're in the chat rooms. They're chatting it up, asking some great pointed questions, and now to add in Revolution Radio, who literally gets about 100 to 200,000 listeners a day, it's very, very cool for us, and to be able to now share you, Crypto Guru, with the listeners who are finding out about us on Revolution Radio.
Well, my friend, you're just getting bigger and bigger every time I talk with you. So hopefully you'll remember us little guys whenever you make it to the upper echelon. I guess you're already there, my friend.
Little guys, my friend. You've been doing this monthly segment with me literally since I think April or May of 2015.
That's right. Yeah, we've been together.
I've seen you literally go from, having a few books out there to becoming the crypto guru, where people who you don't even know are coming up to you, calling you the crypto guru now.
That is true. And actually, I'm getting, it's been a long time for me, but I'm getting an actual .com made as we speak, under construction, and it will be CryptoGuru.com. How about that, my friend?
I love it.
I owe it all to you guys. And I'll tell you, whenever we first started to talk, I had one book out on the paranormal, one book. And if it was not for your questions and the audience questions, it made me even more curious. So that's really the impetus that led me to where I'm at today. Because nobody's going to write a book unless people want to read about it. So again, I thank you. And I tell you, it really does come down to the audience, doesn't it? If they don't have any questions, if they're not reading our books, and if they're not listening, there's no point for us to be here right now. But so I appreciate everybody that's a part of Spaced Out Radio.
And realistically, it comes down to the experience. These stories that you are writing about are true stories of people's experiences because the research is out there. The information is out there. All you're doing is you're doing your hard-earned research, as you have to do as a writer, to put it all together and paint a picture that goes into a book.
That is absolutely true. That's right. And I am in a rather unique position because I have studied literature and I have studied history from a very analytical, academic point of view. So whenever I look at the world of the paranormal, it's something that skeptics can latch onto if they don't believe in this stuff and they want to learn about the mythology behind it. That's one thing. But I really enjoy whenever the believers are reading my materials, because I'm trying to open up this world to them, and I'm trying to connect the dots with all these strange, marvelous, and mysterious creatures out there, because it really does say something to who we are as a human species. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited tonight to talk about giants, because what are they? I mean, are they just a bigger version of who we are as people? There is definitely a mystery there, so I'm looking forward to delving a little bit deeper in it tonight with you guys.
Well, it's funny because as these stories progress and as we get more into social media, we get more into people carrying around smartphones with cameras on them, GoPros, there's more information coming out than there ever has before. Now, that's a good thing because there's more people reporting action, but that also could be considered a very bad thing because people know what CGI is. There's so many different programs out there to fake information, and everybody wants that 15 minutes of fame so that way they can possibly make a few bucks off of something weird, strange, or obtuse that's out there. So is it making your job harder, or is it making your job easier with all the information that's been coming at us the last couple of years?
Well, the more I'm getting into it, it's becoming increasingly more difficult. A lot of the things that people are claiming to be eyewitness to, I am now putting down to implanted memories from the media, because people think that they saw something on YouTube or they saw something on, the Sci-Fi Network about ghosts or Bigfoot or whatever, and they kind of incorporate that into their lives. So if they have some sort of misidentification of something going on out there, they immediately think that it was a Sasquatch or a ghost or something paranormal. So that's one of the biggest problems I'm having as a researcher whenever I sit down to interview witnesses to try to find out exactly what the truth is behind the story. Now, these people aren't necessarily lying. In no way are they hoaxing. Their brain is just trying to figure out something that they saw that might have been a little bit bizarre, and because they've been overloaded by so much paranormal TV, that they are starting to insinuate this into their lives. That's one of the major problems I think that most paranormal researchers are having nowadays, because there's just such a proliferation of everything supernatural, and it's become part of our vernacular. But I keep on pointing out that in no way is paranormal television reality. The reality of reality television is the most fictitious thing out there. So I'm trying to separate the fact from the fiction. I'm trying to look at this from a very, very scholarly point of view, and I try to interview my witnesses to glean the truth behind what story they have to tell me. Most people, we had this discussion last time we spoke, last month as a matter of fact, most people that come up to me and tell me something, they're very sincere. And I think that I have probably around 60 to 80% of the people that come up to talk to me legitimately feel that they've had an experience of some kind. And about 10% are probably trying to pull one over on you. And then the other 10% are probably just, joking around a bit, just coming up to make small talk. But I think that most people that are interested in the field of the paranormal do have legitimate interest in it. But there's a few out there that have this so embedded in their mind that they can't differentiate between fact and fiction.
Hey, Guru, I want to ask you this, because when we first had you on, you were basically dealing just in the fairy realm. Land of the Fae, it was your hot-button topic. But since then, you have absolutely exploded into Dogman, Bigfoot, any sort of paranormal type study, goblins, gremlins, mermaids. Are you enjoying the fact that you have now kind of taken off and branched out so often, or do you prefer to have a real secular type of subject to write about?
That's a great question. I try to keep it as mainstream as possible, but I've never let my love for the fairy realm disappear. In all of my books, I've had some sort of reference, if not a whole chapter devoted to the possibility of all these cryptids out there, from Bigfoot to Dogman to even ghosts and mermaids, to be part of this fairy realm. So that's something that I'm still working with as a researcher, and I'm trying to cover as many, not only as many subjects as I can, but as many theories behind the possibilities of the origins of these subjects. So I am still not convinced that everything that's going bump in the night out there might not have an origin in the world of the fairy realm. But again, that's it's just keeps on more and more research, and I finished on ghosts, and then I'm going to be working on a very special book with my friend here, and then it's going to be off to even more things. So I'm going to try to write at least a few a year. I can really, if I know a subject and I like a subject, I can really just grind down on it and get it done pretty quickly. So I'm looking to put out at least a couple a year.
Well, what if you find my book that we're going to write together boring, and you want to scrap it halfway through?
Now, what possibly could be boring about a Dave Scott biography? I find that ludicrous that you would even mention it. I think that it's going to really open it up to the fans out there, and we're going to see a little bit of who the man is behind the radio persona.
Oh, goodness, trust me, it's not a pretty picture. That's why I hide behind a microphone and no camera.
No, actually, on Facebook, my wife is so enthralled by your Facebook profile picture that she said, you have to find out who took that picture because you have to get one just like that. She actually, my wife now, we've been together for a while, so she's a little bit open with me. And she says, why didn't you tell me that your friend Dave was so attractive? And I said, well, he's on the Facebook page there, but she loved the picture. So I think that people are going to find out the real Dave, and then you're going to have to get a baseball bat to keep behind your door to beat the women off.
Well, Mrs. Spaced Out Radio is working out every night now. And her goal is to get her six-pack back. So
yes,
who knows? Maybe karate or something along those lines is coming back. Trust me, it was a lucky photo. I can tell you that. It was a lucky photo with a lot of doctoring that made it look halfway, at least a 4.5 out of 10 now.
No, it was actually very, very well done. It looked like it was good. You should put that out there and start putting it to casting companies. And I'm thinking you'll probably get your own show within a couple of weeks.
Oh, I doubt that. I doubt that. Self-deprecation is what I am good at. Hey, Ron, you have covered in such a short while, like literally, in the 15, 16 months that we have been chatting, you have gone, like I said, from faeries to absolutely everything. As you have expanded your own horizons, what has been the funnest part of it for you? What has been the most entertaining in the new subjects that you never thought that you would cover?
I've said this before, I worked in human services for so many years that the more that I branch out in different areas of the paranormal or cryptozoology, it is meeting the different people. That's honest to goodness the case. It's not the research that I'm doing out in the woods or going through cemeteries, in the summer evenings whenever the sun sets and the fog is starting to move around the tombstones. That's not as fun as it is to sit down and shake somebody's hand and say, hey, I have a story. See, that's where my stories begin. As soon as somebody sits down and says, I have something to tell you. And it's been fantastic. I mean, I've heard everything from alien abductions to people seeing dogmen walking down a main street about 3 o'clock in the morning, moving underneath the halogen streetlights. It's just been great to hear all these different stories. And it has set me far and near and out and about. Investigating these stories, but it all comes down to the people. I'm definitely a people person, and if it was not for somebody coming down and say, I'm going to show me a story, I would not be in this today.
Hey, let's get to a couple of questions here from our audience, because they are starting to build up. Let's get to William Walkup in the SOR Space Travelers, because he's busy tonight.
All right, William.
Yeah, he's supposed to be working tonight, but he's actually quietly at his desk tuned into us, trying to look like he's working, whether it's by a keyboard or something. I don't know what William does, but I do know he's at work. He says, I got a question for the guru. Has he ever heard about a creature called a hide behind? A creature that follows you in the woods for ill intent, capable of hiding behind the thinnest of trees, as so not to be seen. Heard one mentioned a while ago in the mountains of West Virginia, which would be close to you.
Yeah, very close indeed. Boy, a hide behind. I have never heard that term before, but I've heard, fortunately or unfortunately, about these different type of shadowy creatures that do stalk the liminal regions of human existence. Now, if I may just delve into this a little bit further. What I've been discovering as I've been writing and investigating and talking to people, there's something about the difference between the civilized world and the uncivilized world, that when we step into that world in which we no longer belong, there are things that live in that world that start to interact with us, whether malevolently or benevolently. So that being said, I've been finding out that whenever people leave their comfort zone and walk into the woods, walk into cemeteries, walk into some place right on the periphery distance, that's whenever some strange things start happening. Now, in studying the spirit world on ghosts and writing that book, I started to uncover these Middle Eastern thoughts, especially in Islam, of something called the jinn, where we get our word genie from. And they were supposed to be creatures. There was a category of creatures. They existed in different tribes. But one tribe was something that haunted the woods, that haunted the wild places, that haunt us, and it would be the kind of creature their attribute would be to follow people. So this is something that appears from around the world. The idea that something will approach you whenever you enter that realm, and that's also extremely this is something that happens in the fairy world all the time. People talk about, venturing off the trail, and immediately they're undertaken by different fairy creatures. Sometimes they're called spirits, sometimes they're called ghosts, specters, what have you. But if we're looking at the Middle Ages, these things would be considered fairy creatures. So the idea that somebody was being followed by a creature that could absorb into its environment is something that I've heard happening, and it's also kind of scary.
Let's get to another question from Elizabeth in the SOR Space Travelers Club, and it's about gnome hats. Why did I see gnome with a tam and James saw a gnome with a pointy Swiss hiker type hat? Why did they wear different hats? And I got to preface this. She's only asking this because she knows I hate gnomes. She knows
you hate
she knows they literally scare the bejesus out of me. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. When I first separated from my first wife, I rented a basement suite, and my landlords had a garden right by where I was. So it was a 2-bedroom basement suite, and my daughter was in one room, I was in the other room. And she would wake up every so often, once every couple weeks, and she'd hear tapping on her window. And if the light was shining in or something, she said she would see the image of a little gnome running away through the blinds that would be closed because the light would be coming in. So she would see the shadow of it. And it freaked her out and it freaked me out. So ever since then, gnomes, garden gnomes, scare the living daylights out of me.
Yes, so and that's completely understandable. I'm afraid of clowns for no real reason besides their horrific persona. But so the question concerning is, why do they appear as wearing different hats at different times? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have only seen one purported capture on a trail cam of a gnome, and it did indeed wear a high red hat. The footage in question was analyzed by a company, and it said that the creature on there was able to move something like 40 feet over about 1 second. So whatever this was moving pretty gosh darn quick through the underbrush of the forest. It looked very convincing. It looked like it was not fake, but the creature in question was not completely manifested either. You could see through it in different parts. So there was something metaphysical going on there. It wasn't quite of this world, quite of this dimension. Whatever was occurring, it was definitely an energy form that was manifesting itself in the form of what we would call a gnome. So my question is, whenever people see these things, is the creature implanting the thought in the mind of the person about the way the creature appears? This is something that I've been researching now for a little over a year. That it may be that these creatures, whenever encountered, produce some sort of stimulus, and then the person receiving that stimulus is putting the picture together in their head of what they're seeing. So if somebody has a knowledge of gnomes, they're going to start seeing a gnome. In the world of the fairy, this would be called glamour, the same word we get the glamour for today whenever women put makeup on, that this is a way that can remain concealed and remain hidden. So to answer your question, unless pictures start showing up again and again of the same type of creature wearing the same type of hat, it may be very possible that we are encountering some sort of energy force, and it could be corporeal. It might just be a flesh and blood creature that has the ability to do such a thing, and we are forming the picture in our mind of what it wants us to be, what it wants us to see it as.
I still don't like it. I still don't like it. There's no explanation that you can give that will make me like gnomes.
Well, I'll tell you what I would do if I were you is I would go out and get yourself something called a hag stone, an Hag stone. This is something that you could find around, well, in your area it should be probably pretty plentiful. Go to some sort of moving water, whether it be the ocean or whether it be a very fast-moving stream someplace, and find a small stone that erosion has caused to have a hole through it. Now, it has to be done naturally. And this has been a talisman against any kind of creatures from the other world coming into your world. People actually put them on to boats at one time, as late as the mid-1800s, to ward off any kind of evil spirits. And some people to this day, parts of Italy, to this day still wear them around their neck to ward off the evil eye. So I would recommend, if you might be having a problem there with gnomes, to get yourself a hagstone. It would not hurt.
I've got a dog. I have to tell you a funny story today. My audience, this is totally off topic, but this one, it'll make you laugh. I have a little dog who's a Chihuahua Dachshund cross. We named her Zero because realistically, she, besides being a small dog, she ain't good for anything besides love. And I love her to death. Oh, by the way, she does keep me warm at night because she sleeps by my feet. Anyways, so she has a love-hate relationship with little SOR, who's 3 years old. So little SOR runs around, usually pantless around the house because, we're in full potty training mode, making sure that he's getting the gist of, going in on the john and the potty rather than hanging out, and doing his business in his pants. So today, little SOR and the dog, Zero, are having a little bit of an issue. Zero keeps growling at him, keeps trying to get him away, almost nipping at him. Well, little SOR had enough. So what happened was he decided to urinate all over the dog today. She started growling at him, so he stood up and he pissed all over her. I thought that was...
Wow.
So my wife calls me up, laughing out of her head because she's trying to discipline the boy but can't because she just witnessed this and it was hilarious. The poor dog apparently didn't know what was going on. The boy is laughing because he thinks it's funny, because Mom thinks it's funny. So I had to get that out because I am absolutely, for some reason it just popped into my head. I just had to tell you because I know you have a toddler as well. And
I do.
and you just can't control them sometimes.
That's right. I can't control this guy anytime. I am also, the potty training, he's 3. The potty training is not going at all. Our oldest son was potty trained by the age of 2, and I don't know what's going on with this boy. But, he's a pretty large kid at this point. So I think we'll have to start using, like, adult-sized Depends on the kid, because I really don't know what to do anymore with him. But you think that your dog will now protect you from gnomes. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, you know what? I'm thinking that the boy will, actually, because, he'll just, hey, you're going to piss me off, I'll just piss on you kind of thing, right? So I thought that was funny. Hey, I got a question from the Revolution Radio chat room. This one comes from Big John. Big John is asking, how do you interpret owls, Ron?
Oh, very good question. Now, we have the Mothman over here in the United States, and it is something that has been rumored to foretell the future. Some sort of ominous premonition. Whenever you see this, something is going to happen, like the Silver Bridge falling down in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, or there was, supposed sightings around the World Trade Center before 9/11, and there's pictures of these winged entities flying around the battle sites like in Afghanistan. So apparently whenever you see something like this, there is a warning of some kind. So on the flip side of this, however, in England, we have something over there called the Owl Man. And that, too, can be a premonition, but sometimes it's a premonition of a child dying, which is very unfortunate. And I've spoken to people that have said that they've had visions of owls right before there was a miscarriage, and so there was a belief as well, too, in some of the mythologies that owls were the conveyors of the souls of dead children to the afterlife. But when we look throughout mythology, such as Athena in Greece, one of her animals associated with her was the owl. Now, she was the goddess of wisdom. And so the idea that these are intelligent animals, that they are able to bring with them wisdom from the other world into this world is something that's ancient. This goes back for millennia, if not to the very beginning of humanity as we know it. And if we also have to look at the very modern Harry Potter, and that's how messages are delivered, back and forth by using an owl. But the ancients looked to the natural world as a way to divine what would happen in the world of humanity. And, owls were one of the crucial elements in figuring out what was going to happen in our lives. But if you would talk about comparing and contrasting the Owl Man to the Mothman, I think that they both share very common attributes, and the only difference is that we were separated by the Atlantic Ocean, and we see them in one way, and the British culture sees them another way. But that's a good question. Yeah, the idea of the owl as being it's kind of like the raven, too, in Nordic mythologies, that the owl was a way to get messages to and from this world to the other world.
There's also the theory, Ron, when it comes to owls, that they are messengers here in North America.
They are, sure.
They are also said to be possibly incarnates of extraterrestrial beings, namely the Greys.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you know about that?
Well, at that point, whenever I've heard stories of this, is whenever it comes to extraterrestrial connection, that there might be some sort of mimicry going on, that there is some sort of cloaking mechanism going on to allow these things to get very, very close to the civilized world without us being able to recognize them. That's a scary thought, And again, it goes back to the idea of a glamour, of a manipulation, of implantation of memories. But yeah, it's a very, very curious notion. But when we think of messengers, like I said in Harry Potter, owls is what delivered the mail, so they were messengers, quite literally messengers. But they've always been associated with being able to straddle the line between two different worlds. So if you would look at them as a personification of the gray, it does make perfect sense because they live in two worlds. They live in the air as winged creatures, and they can land on the ground and become earthbound. So they do have a correlation there. But as far as being of the same substance, unless there is some sort of cloaking mechanism going on there, for lack of a better word, I see it as probably the modern mind personifying something in nature because it looks slightly familiar with what we would call the gray extraterrestrial.
Because a lot of abductees and contactees have said previous to their abduction that they have seen owls around, either usually one owl, but sometimes numerous owls just kind of sitting there, not moving and continuing to stare at them. So there's a lot of people out there who absolutely fear seeing the owl because of this.
That's right. Well, in reading some abductee cases, like with Whitley Strieber, I think what is going on, and this is just my opinion, I mean, I've never had the experience like this, but what it seems like is before somebody is abducted and they know they've been abducted, they had probably been taken many, many times before. And they're in some sort of, twilight condition, some sort of twilight paralysis of some kind. So I think that the images that keep coming back to them is these small entities with these large eyes associated with the dark. And I think that that's what's going on. They're projecting their experiences onto the natural world because they cannot really comprehend what happened to them. That is a very, very frightening thing. So that is my take on it. Like I said, I don't have any experiences, and I'm not putting down anybody's experiences at all. But in my opinion, studying these cases, it seems to me that if somebody realizes that they've been abducted, it's only because they've been abducted multiple times. And I believe that they are getting these glimpses of these creatures that have done this to them, and they're just simply projecting it onto the natural world because it was such a devastating thing to them.
Do you think then that the owl may be a symbol, a living symbol that is, for what the paranormal may stand for? Because the owl being wise, very stoic, yet very hidden from what it actually knows. Do you believe that it might be a tie-in animal to the paranormal?
Oh, absolutely. Well, look at it this way. The Native Americans felt it to be that way, as did the Greeks and the Vikings and the Celts. All these societies, all these cultures, separated by time and space, always had the same feeling whenever it came to the owl. And I think it makes perfect sense. It's the ancients. We have lost our deep root and connection to the natural world because we are not dependent upon it as much anymore. I mean, there's still farmers out there and everything, but we've lost the ebb and flow that we had. We don't live in cycles anymore. We don't feel whenever the world is going to be changing. We have our Halloween and we have our summer solstice and everything, but we are so removed from the natural world with electricity and modern conveniences that we simply cannot feel the physical change. So think about that for a second. If you were so connected to the world and so dependent upon it, that everything that happened within that world would make sense to us, and we would feel that it was communicating to us. We've lost that as a modern people. But I think what's going on is that we do want to go back to another time. We don't want it to be so complicated as it is now. We want to go back to a simpler time whenever our lives mattered. Everybody's life mattered. And so now we're looking back to things that happen in the natural world to kind of interact and interpret what meaning it has in our life now. So I do like that, and I do feel that if we are going to have a symbol for the paranormal, it should be the owl.
It's amazing.
Or the hedgehog. I also like hedgehogs very much.
Well, what the hell does a hedgehog have to do? It's only a good chocolate, man.
The hedgehogs, if I could, are also one of those little creatures that have a direct connection to the fairy realm as well. They live in the ground. They also are seen in our gardens. You know, they go around. Well, they're seen in the gardens in Britain. So again, the hedgehog is one of these creatures that inhabits multiple dimensions as well too, and a lot of different folklores.
There was a comment in the Revolution radio chat room about Iceland having laws about building or messing around rocks because of elves that live in secluded places. Have you ever heard anything about that?
Absolutely true. There was a road construction project that was going through, and there was a tree that was deemed sacred because it was connected to the fairy world there, to the elves, and they actually diverted the road instead of going straight. They cut around it. So yeah, absolutely, they're very protective of their elves over there, and I like it. First of all, it's very good for tourism, but there's also tax dollars going to waste in these construction projects because they are diverting building projects and halting building projects in deference to the spirit creatures over there, these elemental creatures over there. So something is definitely going on. But the Icelandic folk, because the weather over there is so harsh and because the landscape is so formidable, I think they have a better connection to the natural world around them. And I say go for it, guys. Live in harmony with those elves, and nothing bad will happen. Actually, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they have one of the highest ratings of personal satisfaction in the world. So this interaction with the elfin world must be doing something pretty good for them.
Might be because they threw all their bankers in jail for collapsing the economy, yes, unlike the Americans and Canadians.
I know, that's the thing, too. The people there, and I've had discussion with people from Iceland and people from Denmark, that they treat each other far differently than we treat people. And this has nothing to do with capitalism or anything, but I spoke to somebody whenever I was doing a study on the incarceration system in Iceland. They're very lenient over there, and plus they keep their prisoners in a state of very, very posh type of environment. Let's put it that way, with the flat screen TVs and padded couches and things. And I asked somebody whenever I was doing a study on the prison systems, why do you do this? And they said, because the person committed a crime does not mean that they're still not one of ours. They're still our brothers and they're still our sisters. So they have a connection far differently to their people than we do, which is rather unfortunate. But I do like to look at that because all these places like Iceland and like, the Soviet Union and places in Africa, whenever I study the world of the cryptids, you have to take this into account because they are going to see the paranormal world differently than we're going to see the paranormal world.
It is amazing the way it can go like that. Hey, we brought you on to talk giants tonight, and I want to get to giants at the top of the hour. But the fairy experience is, and let's touch on this, as we have a whole bunch of new listeners. They are just learning who our famed guests are, such as yourself. The fairies is where you really got started. That's where you kind of kicked off your cryptid career. What made you fall in love with the fairy realm and trying to figure out what is happening there?
Well, whenever I was in graduate school, I did a research project on fairies for no reason other than I truly enjoyed Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. So I wanted to look in a little bit into the mythology of it. I never took anything serious until I started to encounter stories of people that had actually killed their spouse because they thought they were a changeling, somebody that was there was a fairy that came in, took the human away, and left a defective fairy in its place. This is a changeling. Most of the time it happens with children in the crib, but occasionally, from time to time, it has been known to happen with an adult. And up until the late 1800s, in Ireland, somebody did indeed kill their wife and claim that she was a changeling. So I started to investigate the idea of the fairy. And it is, it's one of those, such a rich tapestry. And there's so many different threads within that tapestry that something has to be going on. So whenever I started to look into the world of the paranormal, I always saw Bigfoot as a terrestrial creature, some sort of, lineage of the ape, some sort of hominid, something going on there. And then I looked at aliens as something that was extraterrestrial, and Dogman as something that was, again, bipedal and very much of this world, until I started to delve deeper into the idea of the fairy. And then there's places like the Yorkshire Giant over in England that appears to be a very large creature, nothing like these little Marilyn Monroes with diaphanous wings painted by the Victorian by Walt Disney. This has nothing to do with the actual fairy. Fairies were very fickle creatures. They could either be of the Seelie court, which is the court of the blessed, or they could be of the unseelie court, which were the dark fairies, the dusk fairies, and these were very evil creatures, and this fairy world was at war with one another, and sometimes human beings got in between these wars, and it wasn't a good thing. But there's a rich mythology to it, and there's also connections to a lot of these cryptids. The puka, for instance, in Wexford in Ireland, was capable of changing itself into a large black bird. And in my neck of the woods, a lot of people report seeing something called the thunderbird. And it makes no sense because, these things are seen around the airports. They should be showing up on radar. And one of these things over a residential area, there should be 100, 150, 200 photos from a smartphone of this thing going overhead, but nobody has any convincing proof. And I started to think, well, what happens if these things are from the fairy world? And it's just that every now and then these two worlds bleed into one another. And then the same thing about Bigfoot. People are talking about seeing, Bigfoot out in the woods, and it's kind of there and it's kind of not there, or it disappears in front of them. Or a couple of other things, like they would see trackways, and the trackway would just vanish. It seems like they are stepping into doorways, stepping into portals. Something's going on. They're able to cross between one world and the other world. Something very, very strange is going on. So that's what started to open me up even more to the world of the fairy, that all these things that people are experiencing, all these things that people are seeing may very well be something that people have been seeing for thousands of years, but we just call them by different names, and they all originate from the world of the fae.
A lot of people, when they think of fairies, they think of Tinkerbell. Is that what they look like?
Well, actually, if you look at the contemporary writings, they would be described as usually something a little bit smaller than the average person. Now, as far as the fairy mythology goes, if you're going to look at all the different cultures, then there are different types. There are giants, there are minuscule ones, there are certain types of flower fairies that do have the wings, but they all are of a far different nature. None of them are, with the little wand in hand. That doesn't happen. They have to be appeased. These are creatures of the elements. These are creatures of nature. So you hear a lot of stories of people putting out milk for them as an offering. Some of these fairies, like a house brownie, would actually take care of the chores around the house if you would appease it by leaving out food or honey or bread or what have you. The leprechaun, classic fairy, that it would actually cobble shoes. But again, you really don't want to have one around your house because of the mischief that could ensue. Now, some of the mischief wasn't so bad. Sometimes it would be nothing more than putting knots in the horse's mane or into the horse's tail or letting out the sheep out into the pasture. Sometimes it was just that kind of mischief. But there's also things called pixie lead. Whenever somebody would be out in an unfamiliar country and they would see lights and it would kind of entice them off the trail and they would end up in quicksand or in a mire or a fen or a bog of some kind, some sort of swamp, and their lives could be in danger. So we have a complex world of what the fairy actually is a part of. And that's the complicated thing whenever I am researching all these different things. That what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with something that is terrestrial of this world, or are we dealing with something that has always been here? It exists right underneath the surface of our reality, but it's something that is the fairy, the realm of the fae, something that we think is completely unnatural, but it's one of the most natural things it could be.
Do you think Bigfoot is part of the fairy realm? And the reason why I bring that, let me finish, because
sure,
you're so brilliant, man. Like, I have my friend Tony sitting right beside me. My neighbor Tony is here, everyone, from the SOR Space Travelers. And we were talking, I just throw something at the wall and you go. And I love it. I can't catch you off guard. Very often, I can't catch you off guard. The reason why I'm asking if you think Bigfoot is part of the fairy realm is when you mention that fairies are also known to braid manes and braid things. And we have heard many stories recently from people in this chat room, as well as researchers who say Bigfoot actually will braid horse manes and horse tails. Would that go along the same realm as what the fairy do?
Yeah, in my opinion, absolutely. Fairies were also known to be able to talk to people, sometimes telepathically. And people are also reporting this in the Bigfoot world as well, aren't they? That these creatures are seen, and they are imparting some sort of wisdom to them, or telling them to get out of their territory, or some sort of cognitive communication going on that is not verbal. That is also the hallmark of the fairy world as well, too. And interestingly enough, also the hallmark of the extraterrestrials. So there is something going on. I think that all these creatures, ghosts in some cases, fairies, extraterrestrials, Bigfoot, they're all coming possibly from the same source, the same world. And I say to any researcher, please keep your mind open. Don't rule anything out. That's the way I am as a researcher. But if these creatures are the fairy world, then it's going to be hard to put your finger down. So if people are wanting a body, that may not happen. But if we actually get into there and start researching them and not pigeonholing them, then we might be able to get to the truth behind this. This might be something very quantum that we're dealing with. This might be something extremely, deeply scientific. This might be some sort of quantum physics equation that we're dealing with, rather than a flesh and blood animal.
We have about a minute left before we got to go to break here on Spaced Out Radio. We are with the crypto guru, Ronald Murphy. Ron, do you think that Bigfoot then would be as gentle as what a fairy would be? Or do you think that each of them kind of has their own label of what they are like?
Yeah, I think that will be the case. I think that whenever we talk about Bigfoot, we are actually talking about different kinds as well, too. In 1999, I went out on a Bigfoot expedition with some folks from the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society here in my state. And there was a gentleman that we went out in the woods with, and he was convinced there were different kind of Bigfoot. And one of the Bigfoot that he described was very similar to what we now call a dog man. So it's very possible that there's different kind of these creatures out there, and they all are interacting with our world in different ways. Yeah.
Ron, I got to cut you off. We're going to go to break right now. The Crypto Guru is with us on Spaced Out Radio. We'll be right back.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, news director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover Demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the Crypto Guru for nothing.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest, from Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. We're starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium, Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us. Thank you to everyone listening in on the Revolution Radio chat room. If you're on Spreaker at the Spaced Out Radio chat room or our flagship SOR Space Travelers, good to have you with us. As Joe has a nice picture of his long hair posted on the SOR Space Travelers. He's all rock and roll. Thanks for posting it, Joe. We asked for it. You delivered. Good job. Tomorrow night on the show, Zen Gardner will join us from Spain. We are going to talk about the Mandela effect. Zen Gardner, tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We are live at spacedoutradio.com, as well as on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com and on Spreaker. Catch us while you're going with it. Remember, if you are a part of Revolution Radio, it is a donation station financed by you. Take the time to donate today if you like the programming they are putting forward. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While on our website, you can read the SOR Space Wire by our news director, Eric Markham. You can also check out the Bumblefoot banner. Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses, is the official music of Spaced Out Radio. And you can read my latest blog and the blogs of our team and join the SOR Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. You get your membership. You get access to private sections on our website. You get your name put into monthly prize draws and so much more. Sign up for the SOR Space Travelers today. Tonight we are talking with the crypto guru, Ronald Murphy. He joins us the second Wednesday of every month. He will also be on in September on the 14th. Crypto guru, good to have you back.
Oh, thanks a lot, my friend. Thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to the next hour and 56 minutes.
It's always a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend.
It flies by so quickly, though. I cannot believe that it seems like we just started.
I know. We're already into hour number 2. Hey, the main reason why we brought you on tonight is you wanted to talk about giants. Now, when I think of giants, I think of NBA players because God couldn't even give me another quarter inch to get to 5'9". And I'm still a little bit upset that I never passed my father in height, who is 5'10 and a half. But on the flip side, giants have been prevalent for centuries. They're all over the Bible. David versus Goliath, Nephilim, and so much more. Today you could say Bigfoot. There is stories that the Smithsonian is hiding a bunch of skeleton and skeletal remains of giants. What makes you so interested in giants?
Well, a lot of it has to do with my historical background, the history that I've studied, because these tales of giants would creep up in a lot of the newspapers that I was going through. For instance, good old Abraham Lincoln, way back in 1848, he said, whenever he was talking about the Niagara Falls area, his exact quote was, "The eyes of that species of extinct giant whose bones fill the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara as ours do now." So what Lincoln was talking about in 1848 was the idea that these burial mounds, these Indian burial mounds, were the depositories of gigantic bones, the remains of giants. Now, whenever I was in graduate school, I actually focused on the American part of my education on Indian burial mounds and effigy mounds. So I traveled through the Mid-Atlantic region, and I looked at the different cultures, the Adena, the Fort Ancient culture, the Mississippian culture, the Hopewellian culture, and I started to look at these great burial mounds. And I even went to Cahokia, which is in Carbondale, Illinois, right across the river from St. Louis. It has a pyramid structure there, the largest pyramid structure actually in the New World, and the footprint of that pyramid, it's called Monk's Mound, is actually larger than the footprint of the Great Pyramid of Giza. So we're talking about a massive mound that was built there by the ancient culture back in the 1500s. Well, actually, it goes far more ancient than 1500, but by 1550, Cahokia was larger than London was contemporaneously at the time. So that's, if you can imagine something like that, how big of the scale that we're talking about. But what was going on is these cultures had built mounds in the shape of animals, or simply to house the dead. And farmers, inevitably, whenever they were plowing the fields, they wanted these eyesores out of the way, so they would just plow right through them. And what was going on is whenever they plowed right through them, they were uncovering bones. And not only Indian bones, which they did find a myriad of, but they were uncovering giant bones. And these were reported in the paper. So whenever I'm filing through, very, very old newspaper reports from, the mid-1500s on, or from mid-1850s on, you would start seeing reports of giants being unearthed. Actually, in the 1890s, it was quite common. I mean, even in my area, Western Pennsylvania, there was people reporting finding giant skeletons in the farmers' fields. So as they were uncovering these things, the local newspapers, of course, would be going nuts over this. I mean, this is big happenings. Some of the newspapers in the area at the time were reporting on the front page if a white-tailed deer was seen in the area, because this area was so decimated through industry that anything was making the news at this point. So you can imagine whenever a giant skeleton was uncovered, how this would make the paper. It was, people were going nuts over this kind of stuff. So how the papers would read would be that so-and-so had found the remains of a giant in his yard, and the local academics were examining it. And then the next day in the paper would say, authorities sent to come from the Smithsonian will examine the skeleton promptly. And then the next day would be something like, the Smithsonian folks are here, and then it would disappear. As soon as the Smithsonian Institute would be in the area, all media would cease concerning the giant. So that got me kind of wondering, when we talk about government cover-ups, this was something that was going on before the Civil War came into play. So something is going on. But you can find the reports of giants from Pennsylvania, Ohio, really the entire Mid-Atlantic area, even up into Minnesota and Wisconsin, the Great Lakes area. Something was going on. People were definitely uncovering giant skeletons, and the government was covering it up. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist, but this doesn't take the stretch of imagination to know that whenever the government sent the Smithsonian up, it was to hush the project, what was going on in the newspapers, and, of course, to ultimately take the bones away so nobody could study it for future reference, which is really kind of sad. But there were skeletons reported wearing bronze and copper armor. There was up near my neck of the woods up in towards the Ohio, not towards the Ohio line, up toward the New York border. There was reports of 8-foot-tall skeletons with 2 to 4 inch projections, bony projections coming out of their foreheads right above their eyebrows, that in like horns. So we're even seeing these skeletons as being different than just giant human skeletons. Some were reported as having 2 rows of teeth, which is another very curious find as well. Then, of course, you would have the reports about the elongated skulls, reminiscent of what people would think would be alien, anatomical features. But something was going on, and there was definitely a cover-up, and that got me very, very interested in why people were covering up the giant.
Do you think there are still giants roaming the earth right now? And I'm not saying NBA height basketball players. I know there is record in the Middle East and in China of a couple of people on the planet that are over 8 feet tall. But do you think there's any 8 to 10 footers hanging around besides what we think would be Bigfoot or the Yeti?
Well, Lauren Coleman, the great cryptozoologist from Maine, he wrote a book called True Giants, and there were some claims in there that a true giant could be 15 to 20 feet tall. Now, if this is a completely physical animal, the amount of calories to intake for such a creature would be nearly astronomical. I mean, it would be very difficult, and the signs of these creatures would be everywhere, which leads me to think about the whole idea of the fairy realm, too, that there might be something going on where these creatures are going in and out of our reality. They can be seen every now and then, but they filter back through to their world for whatever reason or whatever way they're doing this. So people have reported seeing them, and not only have they reported seeing them, they have found the bones of these. So do I think that there were giants on the earth, as the Bible says? I do truly 100% believe that. With as much research as I've done and as much firsthand reports that I've read about in contemporary newspapers at the time, without a doubt, something was being discovered that was out of the ordinary, and modern science would not allow you to study it further. But as far as a 15 or 20 foot tall creature living today, I find that rather hard to comprehend, because there would be signs all over the place. And then the whole thing is like how do the mating rituals happen too? You have to think about the nuts and bolts about this in the biology. If we're talking about a species of giant human, a modern human, then there would be virtually no way that you could keep something like that hidden, because the humans like to create art. They like to be socialized. So they also have to eat, and so that will require a lot of space for something 15 to 20 feet tall. Now, if they are an animal, they could not be going around in packs or in tribes, because you would be able to see them very quickly, or at least evidence of them very quickly, because, if you had a group of 10 20-foot tall beings in a particular area, the signs of these creatures would be everywhere. So then you would have to think, well, how would they go about finding a mate to make little giants? And see, so there is a biology that comes into play. So we have to think about that from a scientific point of view. So if you would ask me, do 15 to 20-foot creatures exist nowadays, I would say no. That would be an impossibility. But if people are seeing them, then I would think that they might not be completely terrestrial creatures, and there is something going on by how they come into our world and where they're coming from. And the best way to put an umbrella over this would to say that they are part of the fairy realm. Now, in regards to true giants existing in the past, there is enough evidence, even from Abraham Lincoln, who suggested such a thing, and the Bible that we will look at here in a moment, to suggest that most certainly these things were around at one time as part of the prehistoric era.
Before we get to our next question, we do have to remind the SOR Space Travelers audience that it's better to be late than never. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight for the SOR Space Travelers, surreptitiously. Keep it quiet, just amongst members of the SOR Space Travelers. Surreptitiously is the password for tonight. Use it wisely, SOR Space Travelers, if you're a member of the club. Do you believe, then, that these giants that we talk about, and whether or not there are bone samples, skull samples, actual skeletons of these creatures, do you believe, then, that we are talking about the biblical Nephilim?
Well, that's another part of my research that I've been fascinated with as well, too. Because whenever I was in college, I was a religious studies minor. So I've always looked at the Bible from a historical point of view as well as an inspirational point of view for my own personal beliefs. But I look at it from a lot of different angles. And so the term Nephilim, what we gather from the Bible is these are the sons of God who interacted or took as their mates the daughters of men. So something was going on. Now, what does the word Nephilim mean? Some people have suggested it's from the Hebrew word, a verb which means to fall, that they are the fallen ones. You fall from grace? Are they fallen from heaven? Are these the angels that God cast out from heaven with Lucifer and the rest of his comrades? I'm not sure. There is some scholarship nowadays that suggests that Nephilim is actually from the noun, and instead of meaning to fall, it means lower than. So it's kind of like the same type of meaning, but just it's the same type of understanding, but it's not a verb as to literally fall, but as a noun means that it's less than a human being, which means it has animal qualities to it, which some researchers nowadays suggest that it might be referring to the Neanderthal. Now, that's an interesting thing, and we could talk about that for a while, too, that these giants that were seen in the past may indeed been one of the race of the genus Homo that existed at the same time as modern humans, Homo sapiens, existed. And we know through DNA evidence and through very mainstream science that at least 3 different Homo cultures existed with ours. We have the Neanderthal, we have the famous Hobbit over there in the Oceania area, and also you have the Nisovans, which were another type of creature that were found in the area of Georgia around Russia, and we're finding not only the remnants of these, the fossilized remains of these creatures, but what we're finding these creatures is also very infused with the mythology of Bigfoot, the Almasty, which is the Russian version of the Bigfoot. So there's these ideas that these that these humans existed at one time, may have survived in the historic times to give us the legends of the Bigfoot, the Almasty, and things of that nature. So that may be what was going on.
It's incredible to think that there would be these type of skeletal remains staying around and trying to, possibly even living today. You mentioned earlier that there would have to be a breeding population in order to keep that going. So I'm wondering then, do you believe there are societies out there? And this leads to Joe's question in the SOR Space Travelers. Are there South Sea Island giants around the Papua New Guinea area? Because there's been reports there.
There have been reports. Now, I would say that when we're talking about giants, let's put the idea of a 15 to 20 footer out of your mind, because that is not going to happen in the modern world. In my opinion, in my research at least, I'm not going to rule out anything, but at least from what I've been able to uncover, that's going to be a near impossibility. So if we rule out the 15 to 20 feet, so let's talk about something about 8 feet or even 9 feet. I mean, we're still talking about a huge, monstrous creature. And is that a possibility at that point? Sure it is, because we're talking about a lot less area that's needed and a lot less calories. So is there tribes of these things out there? I would say that if we look back into prehistory and find out that the mounds in which these creatures were buried in indicated that they were tribal creatures with a culture, then yes, if they are surviving to this very day, there would be tribes of them. And places like New Guinea, places like South America, places like parts of Africa, and even places like the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union and Russia, these things could almost certainly still exist, especially if they were self-aware creatures. And they knew that from the past, interaction with a human being wasn't very good for the race. That's the other thing I wanted to point out, too. The Native Americans, the First Nation people, describe having encounters with these giants, and it always ended very badly. It ended in warfare, and it ended with these giants being killed. So if there was a remnant population, they would probably have, as part of their collective unconscious, the idea that human beings spelled absolute doom and disaster, so they would do everything to keep away from us. That's the idea where self-awareness comes from. And to take elusivity and pair that with self-aware, that something could stay hidden. So we're not talking about animal instinct. We're talking about intellectual determination to stay away from mankind. So, yes, they could definitely stay hidden in a world that is separated from ours and in which they know intimately. Of course they could. So when we talk about the interaction with the giants and the Indians, we can also look at that in different ways as well, too, because there's the possibility, and I found this out whenever I was studying some of the Viking mythology. In the Viking tongue, there was something called a skraeling, which was their word for the inhabitants of Newfoundland whenever they had come over. And, of course, in Lonzo Meadows, there is a site there dated to 1000 AD. So we know without a doubt that the Vikings did settle in Canada. That's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so even mainstream science accepts it. But they talked about, in their sagas, about coming in contact with the indigenous population, which they described as swarthy, very hair-covered, bellowing things. So are they talking about meeting these giants there as well? See, this is where it starts becoming, as a researcher, it starts becoming kind of confusing. Because I am personally thinking that some of these Indian tells, and possibly even some of these bones that were found in the burial mounds, may have been from Vikings. But then again, it seems like the Vikings were encountering giants whenever they got here as well. So it's a very muddied water. And it's a shame that these great artifacts were taken from us by our very own scientific organization, the Smithsonian. So we cannot go any further in that anymore because apparently these things would be destroyed. There was actually one report that stated that all the giant remains were put on barges and dumped out in the Atlantic Ocean, so nobody could ever uncover them again. So that's what's going on. I think that some of these reports, especially whenever they talk about these giants that had red hair and had armor on, they very well may be talking about Vikings that made it into parts of the central United States and had some sort of interaction, maybe even acceptance by certain tribes, and they eventually died and they were seen as some sort of god or something. But then again, going back to the sagas, it seems that the Vikings were experiencing giant activity as well. So, like I said, it's very muddy water.
Joe has a follow-up question saying, it's been suggested that museums such as the Smithsonian have surreptitiously, I can't even say the word now, surreptitiously, have been hiding and collecting and hiding giant bones. There are a lot of bogus photos on the internet of giant bones. Do you, Crypto Guru, think there are any legitimate giant bones photos out there? Surreptitiously.
Oh, there are, yeah. Yeah, that's right. The bones that I've seen, I know exactly what they're talking about. Whenever it looks like a human being, a supposed archaeologist could fit within like the brain casing of one of these skulls. Those are definitely photoshopped, and those are supposed to be. These is the Weekly World News, and this is for the P.T. Barnums of the 21st century. But I have found very many photos of skeletal remains and drawings of skeletal remains from the late 1800s, early 1900s, that obviously they were not being faked. This is where people were dressed up in their Sunday best, standing in front of a makeshift coffin in which the remains were put in. And, these things were sometimes twice as large as the man standing in front of it. And if the average person at that time was about 5'4", 5'5", something like that, we're talking about a creature that's nearly 10 feet tall. So something was going on. So people were taking pictures of these things. But I'm also of the opinion that a lot of this photographs, because photography was very expensive, so I'm sure that any of the prints that they had, or that they were also confiscated. So we might never know the truth about what all was discovered out there. Now that's not to say that it will not be discovered anymore, because these mounds are still scattered, around. So if somebody does come into one again, it's very possible that we will have another giant sighting or a giant recovery here, maybe in the not too distant future. But I am also saddened by the fact that the areas where these mounds were seen, the areas have been so cultivated and so destroyed by centuries of civilization encroachment that it may be very well that all that was left to find has been destroyed and dropped out into the Atlantic by the Smithsonian Institution.
Elizabeth is asking, she's thinking for the St. Lawrence Seaway, Great Lakes area, is it possible that some of these bones were whales or narwhals or large fish other than a giant's bones?
Absolutely excellent question. I'm glad that she brought that up, because when we are talking about these giant bones, we're not talking about like one bone. We are talking about a completely articulated skeleton. That's the problem that we're running into. These bones were found within the substrates of the burial mound in which they were placed. So everything is intact. Now, she said about the connection with the sea and possibly some sort of, cetacean or something like that. What's going on with these bones is that oftentimes they were reported by first-hand accounts as wearing necklaces of seashells that originated from the Atlantic, and these things were being found in the Mississippi area. So we're talking about, some sort of great deal of trade that was going on, at least. So they knew about other cultures, other places beyond their own little sphere of influence. But yes, these giant bones were decorated with some of the most elaborate jewelry that was out there, some of the most expensive jewelry, like the shells, and as I said, even copper. Now, she said about the Great Lakes, and in the Lake Superior area, there is a lot of remnants of copper mining going on. So, and whenever they said about some of these giants wearing copper armor, that starts raising a couple red flags that, maybe something was going on here. That's why I thought some of these accounts might be Viking accounts. But then again, if these creatures were wearing armor, then we're not talking about an animal. We're not talking about a Bigfoot creature. We are talking about a modern human, anatomically modern human, although the proportion is completely off, that coexisted with other modern Homo sapiens at the same time. So when we talk about giants, are we talking about now another group of Homo sapiens that existed at the same time as we did, as the Hobbit did, as the Denisovans did, and as the Neanderthals did? See, that's a very, very interesting point. And in my belief, that's probably what is going on, that there were different races of humans out there, and then we just basically won the battle royale, and we've claimed our place as a dominant species right now by killing off our competitors.
Do you think there's any relation to Gigantopithecus, which many people believe and researchers believe is where Bigfoot comes from?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because whenever I was in college, one of the things that really got me interested in the paranormal again is I was reading one of our anthropology books, and it was by Jolly Plug called Physical Anthropology and Archaeology, and there was a comment in there about the possibility of a species of Gigantopithecus that may have existed up into an early modern era, and this in turn gave rise to the mythology of the Yeti. And that was in a college textbook. So they did not rule out the idea that, one of these remnant populations existed so human beings could see them and take this idea of them with them whenever they traveled around the globe. I have no problem with believing in that whatsoever. So when we talk about the Australopithecus, of course, not the Australopithecus, the Gigantopithecus, that could be the case. But we're talking about a very large ape that probably was quadruped and probably not quite as advanced as making metal work and things like that. But that doesn't rule out that all these kind of incidences, all these great skeletons were found may have possibly be a remnant of a Gigantopithecus, because I have not ruled out that there weren't even more species of human out there as well too, and we're just starting to uncover bits and pieces. There was one researcher that suggested that when we think of the Lord of the Rings, the books, the Tolkien books, that the ancient world may very well have been like a Lord of the Rings book, and we had so many different types of creatures out there, human creatures out there. We might have had hobbits out there. We might have had giants. We might have had, anatomically modern people and, things that we would describe as trolls and orcs and all that kind of stuff. It's very possible that the world was populated by so many different kind of races, and we just won the evolutionary lottery ticket to be the prime person now.
Very understandable, but if you look at it that maybe these giants are part of the Gigantopithecus family, then there is a possibility that the people who are reporting Sasquatch and Bigfoot sightings are actually seeing today's modern version of what they called giants 100, 200, 1,000 years ago.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, okay, I see exactly what you're talking about. Sure, and that's the other thing too. If there was a Gigantopithecus out there, the evolution by which it would adapt to its surroundings would have not changed. I mean, it would still be going through some sort of adaptive, recreation of itself in order to live in a very different world. So if we had, a 10-foot tall bipedal ape, that started to come into being, 250,000 years ago, through its interactions with the human race, it's very possible that it downsized and it kind of compartmentalized itself to different types of niches where we had not filled in yet. So that's very, very possible, my friend. I like that theory very much.
Well, it would make sense because there are no 8 to 10 feet human beings walking around, or very few on this planet. So it would make sense that if you considered Bigfoot to be in that category, considering how few they are or how sparse they are, we really don't know because the creature hasn't really been proven. That's what I am thinking personally, and my gut feeling is that this is a tie-in between what Nephilim used to be reported on in the biblical times compared to what the Gigantopithecus is now.
I like that idea, my friend. I like that idea, and I would urge anybody to go out and get and see, this is a perfect line. This is a great commercial on my book, On Wild Men, Tracking Bigfoot Through History. I have a chapter devoted to just this very thing. So thank you very much for bringing that up. But so we talk about the Nephilim. We are talking about a Hebrew culture, a very nomadic culture that came upon races of human-like creatures that they had no idea what was going on. So whenever confronted by something that they did not understand, they would immediately refer it to something as the divine. So they were seen as, aberrations, curses of God, what have you. And I like the idea that we have within our fossil record the actual Nephilim. I do like that idea, and I think that does have credence to our discussion tonight, that there were giants in the world of Genesis is the giants that we're finding in the fossil record as Gigantopithecus, and then what people are seeing nowadays as Bigfoot and Sasquatch. See, the dots are starting to be connected, my friend. We just have to look at this, but and that's what I do as a researcher. I try to look and find out the different type of mythologies around the world and how this compares to what's going on nowadays.
Julie has a question in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. She is asking, when discussing this topic as an evolutionary function, i.e. Darwinism, are we excluding extraterrestrial influences?
Because extraterrestrials is not my strong suit. I will tell people that time and time again. I do not have, I have a working knowledge as much as, the paranormal goes, but whenever it gets right down to the crux of everything, when we deal with extraterrestrials, we are dealing with the science. In order for them to get from one place to another, they have to employ science. So we're talking about something that, is a little bit out of my realm of being. But to answer her question, what happens if we're not talking about extraterrestrials, something beyond this planet? What happens if we're discussing something called an ultra-terrestrial, which is basically something of this planet, except it's above and beyond our intelligence? So whenever people talk about seeing extraterrestrials, they might not be talking about seeing something from another planet or another galaxy, but something from within this world just that occupies another dimension. Now, with that being said, is it possible that one of those types of creatures would be able to interact and possibly breed and hybridize with an anatomically modern human? Yes, I would assume that it would be if slot A matches with slot B. I guess it could happen that way. Now, to answer a question regarding extraterrestrials, is it possible that there was some sort of genetic manipulation going on from a very scientific means by an advanced civilization that visited us from another galaxy? That, too, is an extreme possibility, especially when we look at the headboarding by some of the tribes in South America and in North America that seem to want to mimic the way their gods looked. So they try to get their heads to be flattened and elongated, And indeed, some of these skeletons that were found have this very pronounced cranial defect that was going on, or at least that's what it was believed in the literature of the time. But what happens if it wasn't a defect? What happens if these skulls were natural and what we call giants were actually either ultra-terrestrial or extraterrestrial? See, that's another very interesting point as well, too. And all this has to be brought into account. There could have been an advanced civilization that came to the area of the Great Lakes to get the natural resources like copper. Extreme possibility. There could have been mining operations. They could have been here for a myriad of natural resources that our planet offered in abundance back in the Paleolithic. That's very possible. So we could be talking about, an advanced race that, had crash land or had, leave behinds or whatever, and these things were deified and were eventually buried as, in places of honor. So we might be talking about the bones of extraterrestrials, and could this be why the Smithsonian covered this up back, in the late 1800s up into the early 1900s? That's another extreme possibility.
When it comes to Bigfoot, there's always the talk about, and we'll get more into Bigfoot at the top of the hour, but I do want to get this question in because it's been out there for a while. What do you think about Bigfoot being a dimensional being, and maybe if there is a tie-in to what the Nephilim are, the giants are, Gigantopithecus, do you believe that maybe there is a common power or a common defense mechanism that lets them go interdimensionally?
That's a great point, and I've never had an encounter with a Sasquatch visually. So, my friend, you have, and I know that you've told this story before, but you do it so eloquently. I think that if you would tell your story right now to the audience, and then let's take it from there. If you don't mind, if you can just rehash the story that you had told before concerning your sighting, I think people will start getting a glimpse of what these things may be. So if you would be kind enough to do that, let's
put the pressure on me. Now that your wife likes my photo, and she's just joined the SOR Space Travelers Club now. Now you want my story. This is your time. This is your time. You know what?
Well, let's talk. I've never seen one.
Well, I know, but you know what? Let's continue with the giant talk until we got about another 13 minutes before we got to go to a break here. So we got plenty of time. Let's continue with the giant talk, and then what we'll do is in hour number 3, we'll get into the Bigfoot stuff.
Sounds good. Because what your experience, the experience that you shared with us, is the same experience that many, and I'm not talking about a handful of people, I'm talking about maybe 30 people have shared the exact same thing that you've reported. And not only in North America, but also in Europe as well. The people I've talked to over there as well have shared the same thing that you have shared. So I do want to point that out later because something is going on in that regard as well, too. So, but yeah, if you want to talk about giants for the next 13 minutes before you share your story, that's great. We can do that.
Well, that's fine. What size shoes are they wearing? That's what I want to know. Who's making their underwear? That's when it comes down to it, who are the gnomes that are stealing those underwear of the giants?
That's that's something to look into, and maybe we'll have to see about doing some research on that. That's a very good point. But and we laugh at this because it does seem ludicrous from a 21st century perspective. But one of my favorite places to visit is St. Augustine, Florida. Have you ever been there, my friend?
I have not. I do have to get to Florida.
If you go there and go to the Fountain of Youth Park right there, you can go in and you can see some artifacts of the culture that existed there at the time of the Spanish conquest in 1513. And one of the plaques right there states that there were Indians that were nearly 7 feet tall that lived there. And this is a regular park, where people are employed to do research and everything, and they had no qualms about putting in that little factoid. And it's only now, because there's been so much information and so much ridicule out there, and I'm sure that little statement was probably written in the 1950s. I'm sure that they probably have never changed that plaque since the park first opened. But nowadays, we're so cynical that when we read such things, we completely blow it off and say that's not impossible. But I do assure you, and I do assure all of your listeners, that this stuff was completely plausible to the 1950 mind, because I'm sure that they themselves, or at least their parents or grandparents, knew about the discovery of these giant bones, because it made the headlines around the country. And this was just tying into the fact that in St. Augustine as well, there existed a tribe of giants that the Spanish had encountered. So I would tell everybody to keep an open mind about everything. But that's my little 2 cents. And I just took my family there just a couple of years ago, and I remember going back there whenever I was younger, and I went back and the exact same signage is still up and everything, and I like that. But yeah, they still are alluding to these 7-foot-tall Indians down there.
Where do cyclops come into play? Cyclops have always been drawn as very large creatures, one eyeball instead of two, usually bald, unattractive, probably dateless. Where do they come in?
Well, that's a part of the Greek mythology. Now, whenever we're talking about, and the young lady that posited that it's possible that some of these bones that were described as giant bones were actually from whales or narwhals and things of that nature. Well, I think whenever it comes to studying the Cyclops, we are talking about the uncovering by the ancient world of the mastodon skull, because where the trunk would have went in the skull cavity leaves a very open area that looks like an eye should be there. So I think what happens with the Cyclops is that the uncovering of the bones of mastodons, of extinct elephants, put the picture of the Greek giants into the imagination. Now, there's also something over in Greece that actually predates the civilization of Greece by quite a good many years, and they have something there that archaeologists call the Cyclopean walls. These are huge walls that the blocks are, impossibly heavy, that are fitted together with such precision that it would be very hard to duplicate nowadays with our heavy machinery. So archaeologists gave them the term Cyclopean walls because it was believed that only Cyclops could do such a thing. Now, it was said kind of tongue-in-cheek, but the ancients believed in this very, very much. So when we look at things around the world and we imagine how a human being would do it, and then we would look back at the mythology, and a lot of the places, even like in Stonehenge, it has been suggested by the ancients that giants helped in the construction. Well, it's possible that kind of stuff was going on. So the Cyclops, I think, that the image that the Greeks had of the Cyclops was a result of finding the bones of extinct mastodons. However, the reason they put the face onto the Cyclops of having one eye is because the Greek imagination was rich with the idea that a giant race once existed, and the mastodon unfortunately proved that out, and they kind of added the artistic representation of the one eye in the middle of the head and everything. But they at least knew, a part of their culture knew that giants did at one time exist.
So in part, there's also the theory, and I know it's not your strength, but if we go back to the ancient aliens theory, it is taught that the Anunnaki and other beings were 8 to 10 to 12 feet tall, if not taller, as they helped establish race. Do you think these giants, quote unquote, if you saw my fingers, I'm using quotation marks, could have actually been what people are perceiving to be the ancient alien theory?
Oh, sure. If you are in that camp with ancient aliens, you could tie this in very neatly, as a matter of fact. And whenever you talk about the Anunnaki, whenever you talk about these religions of Mesopotamia that have the very rich understanding that, everything came about from above, that the idea of our culture came from another civilization, then sure, it does tie in very, very neatly to the ancient alien race. And, as a researcher, like I said, this is not my strong suit, but I also have a deep interest in it as well, too. And I'm not the best guest on this, but also I can't rule anything out. If you want to fit everything in nice and neatly, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but the ancient alien scenario makes the most sense out of anything. I'll tell you why. The idea of the Nephilim being fallen or being lower than any of that case would come into play, because it appears that the idea of the sons of God, because God was believed in the ancient world to exist in the heavens, descending, here we come again, to interact with the daughters of man. Well, that sounds kind of like, something landed and then abducted or what have you with the native population. That's what it seems like to me. And so if you want to really have a strong correlation to the ancient aliens, definitely look at the Anunnaki and the creation myths of Mesopotamia, because it will really blow your mind, because it seems like we're talking about aliens the entire time. And I don't want to sound like that guy on the History Channel that always says it has to be aliens. But I think in this point, I think it's aliens.
You don't have Giorgio Tsoukalos's hair.
I know. I wish I did. Holy cow! He should have a some sort of deal with some sort of mousse company or some sort of hair gel company.
I agree.
That would make a killing.
I agree.
Yeah.
And
I was kind of making light of it, but, the guy's a very intelligent guy, no matter what anybody thinks about him. So, I mean, he might seem a little bit speculative at times, and he might seem a little bit out there, but the guy knows his stuff. So, I mean, definitely listen to what the guy has to say.
Oh, for sure. And I think the ancient aliens theory, although I'm still not 100% convinced of it, it does make sense when you look at whether it's the Mayan, the Incan, or the Egyptians, who all have, pyramids and large tombs that we're still trying to figure out how they built them with extremely primitive technology, or what we perceive to be extremely primitive technology. Using the whole case of the giants, if you have a couple of 15-foot giants or aliens with uber strength in order to pick up these 4 or 5 ton rocks to build the pyramids, it would make sense that there would be help for mankind in building these structures. And I guess that's the ultimate mystery.
That is the ultimate mystery. And like I said, we can look at the walls over in Greece, and they thought that it was built by Cyclops, and that name exists with us even to this very day, because they could not understand. Now think about this now. We are dealing with a culture that has lived in this area for thousands of years, and part of their distant past was these great walls that they could not comprehend how they were built. So, how far back does this go until the memory becomes so dim that they have no recollection of how they did it? So these are very, very interesting clues that are coming down from history for us, And a couple other things that you can look at just to whet everybody's appetite concerning the ancient aliens. Whenever you think about the burial mounds in the New World over in North America, the bodies are situated within these mounds to almost assume a sort of what you would find in a cockpit. So whenever we think about a mound, there was different types of mounds too. There was a conical mound, which looked very much, and I studied these things in person, which looks, a lot like a Gemini rocket cone. I mean, I don't want to go too far afield here, but there are even reminiscences within the earthworks of things that look remarkably like vehicles that were designed to take you out of Earth's orbit. So whenever we talk about the conical mounds, this does look like, and people feel free to look it up online, just type in conical mounds and you would see what I'm talking about. And these giants were placed in it. So if you would think about how the ancients put them in there, it would have been like they were in a posture looking up as if an astronaut were going to be lifting off of the Earth.
On that note, we're going to go out to a break here on Spaced Out Radio. Ronald Murphy, our guest, the Crypto Guru. We'll be right back.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 mediums and a large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Space Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you with us on this Wednesday night, early Thursday morning, if you're listening on the East Coast. I am still on yesterday because I am in British Columbia, Canada, Northern Hemisphere. That's the way we like to roll around these parts. Tomorrow night on the show, we're talking about the Mandela effect. Zen Gardner will be our guest. Wasn't it Berenstain Bears, not Berenstain Bears? I don't know. I'm still scratching my head on that one because I always thought it was Steen. Anyways, we're going to talk about the Berenstain Bears and the Mandela effect tomorrow night on Spaced Out Radio, right here live on Spreaker, on spacedoutradio.com, and Revolution Radio coming up tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. We do want to remind you, if you're listening in on Revolution Radio is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Help them out. Donate today in order to keep the great radio running. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. While there, you can join the SOR Space Travelers Club. It works out to about $5 a month. With that, you get to be automatically included into monthly prize draws. You also get to have your name put into a private section on our website for you to post. You get access to private group interviews. We're still waiting to fire that part up, and so much more. The other guys just give you access to their archives. Not us at Spaced Out Radio. We give you a hell of a lot more because we actually care about our valued listener. While on our website, you can check out the SOR Spacewire, our daily news articles by our news director, Eric Markham. Check out the Bumblefoot page if you're listening on spacedoutradio.com or Spreaker. You can hear our music master, the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, formerly of Guns N' Roses. He is the official sound of SOR. And you can read my latest blog and the blogs of our team. My latest blog is about time. Where did time go? Why is it moving so fast? Never thought I would see myself in my 40s. Gray hair. Don't like it. Don't like it at all. We're talking with the crypto guru tonight. Ronald Murphy comes on Spaced Out Radio the second Wednesday of every month. Tonight we're talking giants, Bigfoot. Crypto guru, welcome back.
Hey, I can't believe that we only have 53 minutes remaining.
I know. It always flies by, buddy. Always flies by. And you being on the East Coast, I do have to say, you are a monthly trooper doing this show. And I really appreciate it because I know our audience loves you every time we come on. I get to check the ratings out, and you're one of the highest rated shows that we have. And, you know,
I appreciate that.
Well, appreciate the audience because they're appreciating you. I have nothing to do with it, man. I just sit here and talk on the other end of a microphone.
Well, you do a bang-up job doing that.
Well, I try. It's all about having some fun, though, in these weird and arcane topics that we discuss every night on the show. I got a question.
That's right. Who else is doing it? That's the thing. Who else is doing it? So I appreciate this forum.
Well, there's a lot of good people out there doing it. Just not everybody's doing it 7 days a week like we are. So
that's right.
You know, I mean, yeah, maybe we're a little over excessive around here, you know, but hey, we got to get the message out there somehow. So we just say, screw it, let's do it. And that's just the way it's been since day one. Joe has a question in the SOR Space Travelers Club for you. He's saying that there has been found in the Middle East 26-inch, 5-pound spearheads. Do you believe those were weapons of the giants?
Let's see here how I want to answer this so I don't sound like I'm too, hyperbolizing everything. I would think that finding something that looks like a spearhead was probably meant to be a spearhead. Okay, that's my one side to talk about. But on my scientifically scrutinizing side, I would think, well, there might be a ceremonial significance to it as well. So the jury would still be out on these kind of finds because we really don't know what they were used for. Now, say, for instance, that they were ceremonial. That also does not rule out the idea of giants because this might be some sort of, attempt at mimicking what they had seen in this giant race as well. I want to talk to you guys real briefly here about our friend Goliath whenever we're talking about the idea of giants and using weapons and everything. So how big was Goliath supposed to be? So the Bible actually gives the whole idea, the whole method there in cubits and everything like that. So he was a pretty big guy. I'm trying to think about what it would have been size-wise. I think it would have been something like 7 feet tall, I think is probably what Goliath would be. Let's see, it said here in the Bible, 6 cubits in one span. So no, actually I was off. That would be about 9 feet 6 inches. So we're talking about almost 10 feet tall. Now, when we look at Goliath and the notion of sophistication or culture, he doesn't seem to be the brightest light bulb out there. And he's defeated by a boy that has a slingshot. So we see this almost as a cultural tell that David was able to defeat a giant out of human intellect and ingenuity. So it might be possible that the reason why we are where we are as a human race and the giants aren't where we're at is because we had a level of skill that they simply did not possess. And whenever we talk about giants, could the meeting of David and Goliath actually have been a cultural memory to show what advanced human technology, even with something as simple as a slingshot, was able to do to one of the giant races? So in that respect, it's very possible that they did not use any kind of advanced weaponry besides anything that's near at hand. So that's why the jury is still out with me concerning the finds of giant weapons.
Do you think these giants have any supernatural type powers, or are they just absolutely enlarged human beings?
Well, the cultures in which they were said to exist saw them differently, didn't they? They saw them as something that they were either from the gods, they were deified mortals. There was something to them that was, in essence, magical. Now, whether it was real or imagined, that's a subjective thing. So everybody else has to make their own mind about that. But there's also a fear to them as well. So I think they're magical in the sense, from the realistic sense, that they were so different from us that they obviously were from a world that was different from the magical world to the beholder of such a creature. Now, the idea of actually being able to work magic, that is something that, again, that it would require different types of research and different types of belief. But of course, I am the guy that likes to believe in such things. So obviously, they had powers that were not typical of a regular human being.
The reason why I bring that up, and we were going to talk Bigfoot in this hour, is because there are a lot of people out there, and it's not the scientific community, who believe that Bigfoot has some sort of extraterrestrial type power. Okay? The pictures that are always blurry, the video footage that is always blurry. It's said that many believe that Bigfoot can send out a signal that really screws with electronics. That's why they're never caught on game cameras, or rarely ever. And if we try and bring in the fact that Gigantopithecus could be, if that's what Bigfoot are, could be related to Nephilim or whatever is out there regarding giants, could it be that there are supernatural abilities from these creatures?
They're good. Perceived supernatural abilities, absolutely. I've been focusing a lot of my research as of late on the idea of pheromones and the idea of infrasound. Because, again, as somebody that wants to work on both sides of the fence, both the scientific field and the paranormal field, and try to make them coalesce, I try to think of a biological reason why things could seem magical. And in dealing with such, I looked to the natural world, and I found out that some animals, some mammals, like the elephant and the whale and the rhinoceroses, they can produce infrasound to actually affect the environment around them. So MSNBC did a report on infrasound a couple of years ago, and their findings suggested that infrasound would be able to affect somebody to make them feel as if they had a paranormal experience. That was their words, not mine. Of course, we know about these findings because it has military, components to it, that something could be used by the military. So this is the reason why we know about infrasound, and I'm sure the military is using infrasound as part of its arsenal right now. But as far as infrasound goes, it is able to affect, as MSNBC reported, that people were able to have paranormal experiences, feel like something is in the room with them, feel like they were being watched. Now, also with the idea of pheromones, that smell can somehow affect somebody, because whenever you smell a skunk, you automatically get the image. You know it's a skunk, you get the image of a skunk. So I was thinking, what happens if smell and sound is used in tandem? What would that do to the human body? Well, it's very possible that these creatures are able to affect the environment around them, so they would not have to have physical contact to have a confrontation. It's interesting from a biological point of view. If something wants to be territorial and not have any contact with whatever's invading their space, to be able to evolve to use sound and to use a pheromone, so they don't have to come in direct contact with the intruder. I've had reports, I've heard people talk about, for instance, one child was in his bedroom. He saw something walking past the window. He looked out, and there was what will be described as a Bigfoot creature outside. The creature looked at him, and the child said its eyes turned red. So, that's from a child. We can understand that there might be something going on there within the child's mind, imagination. So take another account about a man and a woman that were outside, getting a little frisky out in the woods, which I've heard tell can happen from time to time. And as the guy was going to do whatever he was going to do, he bumped into some sort of creature in the darkness of the woods in the dead of night. And the man described the creature as being just as surprised to see somebody else out there as the man was bumping into the creature. But the creature turned, and it looked at him, and of course he couldn't see any kind of details until it looked like its eyes were filling up with blood, until they started to glow a bright red. Now, that is bioluminescence, and nothing a mammalian can do that. So what is going on in this realm? Either it was able to adapt itself to have bioluminescence as a way of territorial display, or that it was able to use infrasound and pheromones to suggest something into the mind of a human being that it was, this was a good time to get out. So these are the kind of things that I'm messing around with right now in my research. It's possible that what we call magic is a biological process what these creatures employ to keep them out of harm's way. And when we think about them disappearing, and we think about the shoddy game cameras and the blurry game cameras, what we would call magic might be some sort of biological acoustics that these things are putting out to actually interfere with not only our thought processes, but certain types of energy waves as well, like would be captured on film and on recordings.
And here I thought Bigfoot was just somebody meandering around. Because I know in my area here, there have been a few Bigfoot sightings, probably within the 40, 50 miles from here, and around this one lake area where there's a couple of beautiful waterfalls. So, Crypto Guru, you and Mrs. Crypto Gurette have to come up here to check that out.
I'm hoping September. If anybody is at Willow Creek next year for the Bigfoot Days, I will actually be speaking out in Willow Creek, California next September. So I'm hoping that I will be able to get a chance to finally get up there to see you and your lovely family. So let's hope so, because I would love to do investigation out in the Pacific Northwest in the type of forest and the type of terrain that you guys have.
Well, it's everywhere around here. And I'll tell you this, man. I'm more worried about running into a moose or a bear than a cougar. Not so much a bear. Bears don't really scare me, but a moose or a cougar than I am a Bigfoot. That's for sure.
And you've seen them in your yard. You've seen mountain lions in your yard, haven't you?
Yes, last October, November, I saw a cougar in my neighbor's yard, which was
I remember.
Which was beautiful.
Yep, I remember talking about that.
I do too. You know, and I know that I haven't seen any tracks around this time, but it's funny because as the nights start to get a little bit longer, and they're starting to get a little bit longer every night now that we're past the, July 21st, and the summertime and the solstice, I can tell you this, man, I start to not stargaze down below. I start to stargaze up on my patio with my dog out, because you just never know what is running around this area. I can tell you that.
And I see, that's the thing. We don't have this in Pennsylvania, and I really want to experience a place that has the kind of wildlife that you have.
Well, it is beautiful up here. There is no McDonald's. I tell you, you go out of town, you hit a McDonald's, that's a treat. There's no KFC here, no Wendy's. You have to give up on the good life in order to live a good life, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, I know. You have to give up on what we call the creature comforts to get back to where you find yourself. I do understand that.
I hear you. But with Bigfoot, do you think it is possible, after everything you just said, that there is a possibility that there could be a living blood creature out there that has these type of supernatural powers to shut down electronics or to cause them to malfunction?
I do. Oh, absolutely. I truly think that there is a capabilities of doing that. Now, again, when we talk about supernatural, I am not completely convinced that these might not be natural abilities that we simply call supernatural because we simply don't understand how the ins and outs function. But I think that that's most certainly the case, and it's a very probable solution to why we do not have a convincing film of Sasquatch besides the Patterson and Gimlin film. And remember, that was done on a different type of recording device as well. That was on actual film. It seems like whenever we deal with things like video, that's whenever things are starting to get messed up with these creatures. So it's very possible that the kind of wavelengths they're putting out or the kind of interference they're throwing out there can only disrupt certain types of machinery.
Well, I don't know. I've talked to so many researchers who have had game cams go down, for just a few frames and then fire back up, or batteries that are brand new dying within hours when they should be lasting days,
Sure.
And it really makes you wonder. I mean, Eric Mothman, who's been on this show a few times, he has 3 game cameras out in Florida trying to pick up Bigfoot, where he has had a number of Sasquatch experiences near his cabin way out in the Everglades area, or north of the Everglades, but still in some swampland. And he is saying that he'll put 3 cameras up. He'll know they're there because they'll leave clues, but all he'll get on camera is either blank shots, the batteries will die on his cameras, brand new batteries, or he ends up getting these weird looking white streaks of light or white orbs that will appear instead of the Sasquatch. And that's why I'm wondering if Sasquatch would be a multidimensional creature in your mind, or has the ability to cloak itself, which is or shapeshift, which is something I believe.
Yeah, I do. I do think that is very plausible, and which is the reason why I keep on going back to the Goblin universe, the whole idea of the fairy, because this makes sense to me from a fairy perspective. But the times that I have researched Bigfoot areas in my vicinity, I have indeed seen these reported orbs of light with my own eyes. I've actually caught them on camera, but I've never captured a Bigfoot, nor have I seen a Bigfoot. I've heard the sounds, the stereotypical whoops, even a wood knock at one time. But I would think that there is something going on, supernatural, related to these creatures, because so many weird things go along in conjunction with either the sightings or where they're supposed to be roaming.
Gail has a question in the SOR Space Travelers Club for you, Guru. She says, I believe everything has a purpose. If that be true, what purpose is an aimlessly wandering ET-related Bigfoot serving?
Oh, what? Oh, you mean like why he's just like wandering around? What is his purpose here?
Yeah.
Well, okay. There have been suggestions that these creatures were made to be slaves, to be servants for an alien master race, and whenever the race left this planet, they simply left their slaves behind. I mean, that's a notion that goes back for quite some time, that there was some sort of genetic manipulation going on, fusing of human intellect with the brute strength of an animal to have this own species capable of doing work for an advanced race, and they were just kind of left behind. There's also the idea that that these are almost like drones, and they're sent out as part of a scouting party to collect evidence. That's also another possibility as well. But the reason why, if these things are indeed of extraterrestrial origin, why they have been left behind, that is, that's something that's up for conjecture. But I would think that when we talked earlier about these things being used to build pyramids or to build walls and things like that, then it could be possible that this is just, they were seen as tools that were left behind by an advanced alien race and just simply discarded. And now it's up to them to find their place in the world.
I get that, and it makes a lot of sense because everything does have a place, even mosquitoes, as much as I hate, and snakes, can't stand them either. And I'm sure somewhere out there people will say, well, there's a place for garden gnomes out there too, but I just don't see that.
What I am thinking, though, is because these things are so elusive and they're so good at staying hidden, if they are multidimensional, and I think that we can all pretty much assume that that is some attribute of them, that they're not completely of this world. But even whenever they are of this world, they have to be so well adapted to stay hidden, even if they're here only for a temporary period of time before phasing in and out of different worlds, that they are so adapted to their particular environment that they are able to remain hidden from all the technology and wandering eyes.
Daryl has a question in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. She is asking, do you think solar flares or other solar activities could be affecting the battery life in these trail cams?
Well, I mean, that's a possibility, but I have been out before on an investigation, and some strange things happened. And whenever the strange things were going on, my battery in my camera went down to almost nothing, and then whenever the activity ended, it was almost back up to full again. So it seems like something is draining these batteries deliberately, whether it's for manifestation purposes, such as in whenever you talk about ghosts, that some people say that they have to draw from the environment in order to manifest in some sort of physical form, which is a possibility. But it seems like the same thing is going on with Bigfoot. Now, whenever we talk about going in and out of dimensions, is it possible that you have to suck energy from sources around you in order to open up the door to allow yourself in and out? Remember now, a lot of these places where Bigfoot are sighted are around power plants or around electrical substations and things where there is kinetic energy stored. So is it possible that in order for you to see a Bigfoot manifest itself in the physical form, it has to draw from whatever's around the environment to give it the energy necessary to appear visible?
I'm not too sure about that. And getting to my own personal experience regarding this, when I had my experience, we had the sighting of the 2 Bigfoot, possibly 3 in the area. 5 days later, and this is on a friend's property, there's no power lines around besides the small ones that are running power to a house, okay? But none of the big power lines. And then 5 days later, because they had a lot of paranormal activity, we would do perimeter walks around their 10 acres. And if I could have bought that piece of land when they sold it, I totally would have, because there was some strange happenings there. And it's weird how, when you and I sit down to write a book, we're going to do a chapter called The Farm. And nice. And I will explain everything that happened there. But there was a lot of spirit activity there. And we were walking along the side of the old 2-bedroom cabin house that was there, 1 level, very rustic, survived a fire back about 40 years ago, kind of like real rustic house. And we got about halfway to it, and the 4 of us just kind of stopped because I said, it feels like we're being followed. And in behind the house, they had this old cherry tree that was, and big old cherry trees, the bark looks black. It doesn't, like a blackish gray. It doesn't look like the brown bark that you see on other trees or the white bark. It's, you can tell when a cherry tree is old. And this cherry tree is probably, 25, 30 feet high. Big one. And anyhow, we all turned to look to see if there was anything following us, because the energy around just felt like we were being followed. Myself and a lady there, out of the 4 of us, 2 of the 4 of us, actually turned, and right at the bottom left of that cherry tree, from the ground to about 8-9 feet high, maybe 10 feet, there was like pixelation standing there. And much like you would see the square-on-square pixelation that they use to block someone's image out on television, that's what it looked like, except it was ground to about 8 to 10 feet high. The other 2 gentlemen who were with us could not see it. Just could not see it. So, after about 30 seconds, we turned, we continued walking to the front of the house, and we walked for about 20, 30 seconds, and from behind the house, that's where we heard the roar of the Sasquatch.
Wow.
And I will tell you this, man. I've seen the creature. I've seen 2 of them. I know there was a possible 3rd in the area. I'm now convinced of that. They did not scare me. Hearing that roar, I have never had the hair, every single hair on my body stand up so quickly. Even when I saw the extraterrestrials in that same forest on the farm, it did not put my hair up on my body like that roar did, because there was the pixelation and then there was the roar. And that's why I am convinced that Sasquatch, unlike these people that are going through what I like to call the Caucasian Christian Science method, okay, where we don't believe anything unless we use the 5 senses on it. That is why I believe that there is something special about Sasquatch.
Yes, and I agree with you, which is the reason why I'm 47 years old, and I devote so much of my time looking for this. I do agree with you. There is something special to us, to this Bigfoot. It's part of our identity of who we are as people. It's cross-cultural, and it's part of our collective unconscious. And there is something special, and that's the reason why we're talking about them right now at 2:35 in the morning Eastern Time.
Well, it's only been 35 here, so I'm going by my clock.
That's right.
I got,
Oh.
And Eric Markham, our SOR Spacewire news editor, he posted in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, the recordings of Bigfoot roars are scary as hell. They really are.
They are.
And when you hear it with your own ears, like, I'm not into this whole, you see the guys on television, they're banging trees or whatever they are doing or giving whooping. I don't really care about that. When you hear an animal roar, and we've all been to the zoo. We have heard lions, cougars, bears, tigers, whatever animal roars out there. But when you hear something that's a shrieking shrill combined with a really pissed off big animal, I'll tell you, man, like even though I have headphones in right now, and the people who are out there who've actually heard this with their own very ears, you'll understand. There is nothing that puts the hair on your body straight up than hearing that, and you wonder, do I got to get the hell out of here now? You know what I'm saying?
Right. I do. About a month ago, a friend of mine, Ron Moorhead, was on Space Out Radio with Mr. Tyson. If you happen to listen to that, then he had the Sierra sounds where he alleges that he recorded the sounds of Sasquatch communications. Now, there's no roars in that, but even the sound of the communication is enough to set your body on nerve. It's very unnerving because it sounds so utterly natural that what takes you back is it sounds like something that definitely does exist within the environment. It's something that hits a very primordial chord with us, but it's so disturbing in its inhumanity that you become, I got to get out of this area. But so if anybody wants to hear anything, I would suggest, listening to the sound of a roaring Sasquatch. I'm sure there's things on YouTube, but also look up these Sierra sounds as well by Ron Moorhead if you want to hear some of the extremes of the vocalization that's been reported in the Sasquatch creature.
Well, we actually have those recordings from Ronald Moorhead. And if you're a member of the SOR Space Travelers Club, where you can get onto the private section of the website, you can actually play those hearings for yourself to hear them all again. So it's really, really cool.
That's a very lucky thing, because for $5, that is a great deal, because I know I actually did a conference with Mr. Moorhead out in Ohio back in June, and I know that he sells the book with the CD in it for $22. So you're actually making a pretty good deal right there. So if you guys want to listen to that, I would suggest that anybody who is not a member hurry up and become a member, because you're saving already, almost, you're only paying a quarter of what the recordings would cost if you would buy it yourself. And for somebody that does research, paying $5 is pretty gosh darn good to have these kind of resources open to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more on there. But, I'm really starting to be convinced that there really isn't a lot more to be said out there about the different types of investigations that are going on in the forest regarding Bigfoot, because we are having the scientific community, and it's funny, over the last couple of weeks, even before we joined Revolution Radio this past Monday, we've been debating the word science, and how all of these so-called researchers are throwing around the word science all over the place when it comes to whether it's paranormal investigation and cryptids, whether it's Dogman, Bigfoot, or anything like that. And I'm not a fan of that, because I don't believe that you are a true scientist if you're doing that. I
agree.
When they say, we're trying to get the scientific answer to this, I don't buy that, Ron. I really don't. It's becoming a real pet peeve of mine.
It is, because we had talked about this an hour ago. These things might not be something that you can pin down like a moth or a butterfly underneath glass. It might not be that kind of thing that you're working with. You might never get conclusive, quote-unquote, scientific proof about these things. Now, as a writer, of course, I am going to examine this from so many different angles, including scientific angles, because I want to include as many points of view as possible. But if you are going out into the woods with the sole purpose of capturing something to be studied by science, and you're going after Bigfoot as your quarry, it's very unlikely that you're going to be returning as a satisfied customer.
Mm-hmm. I fully agree.
Yeah.
I fully agree, but it's funny because the people who are having more of a relaxed method of research and actually trying to use the other approach about getting to know the creature or letting the creature get to know them, it seems like they are having a heck of a lot more success in studying and researching rather than the people who are going with this pseudoscience technique that if it doesn't fit into the five senses, it doesn't exist.
Right. And now the people that you were talking about, habituation, look at like the way Diane Fossey or Jane Goodall would have approached, dealing with the great apes. That's the kind of thing that would have to happen if we are dealing, even if this thing is interdimensional, even if this thing is in the realm of the fairy, like I like to believe, that all these types of creatures required some sort of human interaction where you had to ease into the relationship. And, these little nature spirits, these elementals have proven in the past that they will interact kindly with a person if the person shows them kindness and gives them gifts and, it just is very, very patient with them. Going out into the woods, and I have problems with researchers about this all the time because I'm always asked the question, do you want to go out and do some research? And I say, well, how are you going to do this? A lot of people will take their car, park it off to the side of the road, and just start going through the woods looking for these things. That's definitely not the way to do it. And all these people that do this stuff never come back with any kind of results. It requires a great deal of planning. It requires a great deal of research, to tell you the truth, about finding areas that have reported these things in the past. And then whenever you get out there, it's not going to be like on TV. The first 30 seconds you're out there, you're not going to hear whoops, and you're not going to get responses whenever you take a stick and hit it up against a tree. It's just not going to happen. If these creatures are in an area, it's going to know that you're there probably even before you get out of your car. This is their living room. So whenever you get into an area, you have to understand that you have to make it, you have to give them a reason why they want to interact with you. So I do have problems with these researchers, my friend. I do have problems with these people that just claim that they're scientists and they're going out there looking for footprints that have a mid-tarsal break or looking for vocalizations that fit into some sort of parameters on an oscillating scale. It doesn't work that way. These are creatures that, whenever we talk about magic, for lack of a better word, these things are magical because they exist outside of our understanding. That's why they're hidden. That's why they're cryptids. That's why they have been able to elude classification since the dawn of humanity. And we have to look at them with that kind of respect if we're going to do the proper research.
Gail has a question in the SOR Space Travelers, but not for you, for me. She is asking, Dave, why was your Bigfoot passive when you saw him and then roared so menacingly at you? I think, and I've thought about this, Gail, I think the roar was just their sound. Much like a cougar has their sound or a lion has their sound when they roar. The menacingness, is that a word? Menacingness? The menacing sound, let's put it that way, of the roar, I think was not intended as a violent thing, because the Bigfoot, I'm a firm believer in what First Nations people say. Okay? You don't see Bigfoot. Bigfoot allows you to see it. And I think that was just my time. I think they knew that, and I know I'll probably take criticism for this, I think they knew that spiritually I was ready, and that they knew that I meant them no harm. I'm a firm believer in what Mike Johnson from the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch Research in Colorado says, which is they can smell gunpowder, so they would not have smelt any on me because I don't carry any weapons. I don't carry a gun. even though in my area here I probably should for some of the areas where I'm going. When I look down and I see some pretty big, 8-9 inch round moose tracks, so I think it was just in the area because we had maybe seen the pixelation by the cherry tree that it actually roared to maybe say, hey, you saw me, that was a freebie, but be more careful next time, or something along those lines. Because in the end, I do believe they are a wild animal. I wouldn't mess with them. I wouldn't walk up to them or chase one down because I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure, it could hurt. And I'm a little out of shape. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to I will never walk into the wilderness with people who are faster than me or people that I can't catch up to trip. So that's my only way for survival, with these bad knees that I'm carrying around. So if you're out in the wilderness with me, just be prepared. I may have to trip you.
I will remember that.
Yeah. So I don't take it as it was menacing, as more as it was a sign that you saw me and, do you believe me now kind of thing. I guess that's the easiest way that I would put it. And yes, I used the real long version of that, and I apologize for that.
Oh, no, that was great. See, I think that people that have firsthand accounts need to be the people that is doing all the talking, because I'm only talking things from a very theoretical point of view. You have had the experience of seeing something and all the emotions that is elicit. It does something to you as a person, doesn't it? It makes you change your entire outlook on what reality is and on how the world is perceived. Does it not?
It totally does. Because there are a lot of researchers out there, such as yourself, who haven't had very many, if any, experiences whatsoever. And, to try and bring credibility to what I have seen personally and what other people have seen personally, I think that's what I am trying to do with this radio show, with bringing in the audience, that that I am not someone who's here to BS anybody. I'm someone here who just wants to find answers to my own experiences, and there's a lot of people like me out there, which is why I think this show is transcending into a bigger format with people and listeners, because I believe everybody is starting to realize that, but I'm not trying to turn this into, oh, my show is awesome or anything like that. That's not what this is about. But in the end, it really is about trying to figure out why this is happening, not only to me, but other people who are having these experiences. And if it is happening, what are these creatures? What are they doing? Why are they here? Okay? Why are we not giving them the time of day to try and figure out what they truly are? And I feel for people such as you, Ron, where a lot of your research has been on, eyewitness testimony, legends, stories that you've written, reports, whether it's television, newspaper reports, or anything like that, because that's where you've had to get it. Do you wish, Ron, as I ask you that you could take more time to go into the field to possibly have that sighting, or whether it's Dogman, whether it's Bigfoot, or anything that you are currently studying?
Yeah, well, whenever it comes to the cryptids, I've not had that experience, but I have seen enough and I've heard enough to know that definitely there's something out of the ordinary, something paranormal going on out there. I've seen very, very strange light anomalies with balls of moving light, with orbs of light that definitely, without a doubt, had an intelligence to them. They were under the control of an intelligent entity of some kind. I've seen that. I've recorded it. I've had team members see it. So it wasn't just me. It wasn't a subjective thing that was just personal to me. It was something that was happening, and everybody around us was being affected. This was a place that is prominent with Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings. So I saw firsthand that there are things, to borrow a quote from Hamlet, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophies. I mean, without a doubt, I witnessed this all firsthand, although I've not seen the typical Bigfoot or the Dogman yet. But I know now that there is some sort of connection to another world with these creatures, because there was things that were going on that weren't, well, they were very natural because it was in nature, but they were unclassified and could not be scientifically explained. Let's put it that way. But I would love to have the encounter to see one of these creatures one time, just to prove to myself that what I'm looking for and what direction that I should go within my research. Because I think it does take a very personal encounter to figure out what these things mean to me, so I can take my research to the next level.
Is it important for you going forward in order to do that? Do you believe? Do you believe that you need to get out there more? And I'm not just saying around the Pennsylvania area, but, you know, and everything does come at an expensive price, especially in these fields, because, let's face it, the financial gains from it are not as expected as many would expect they are. But do you think, though, that there is going to come a time in your own research, albeit maybe for curiosity, that you're going to have to start making that trek into the forest a little bit more to be a part of it?
Well, I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to do field research from Florida up to Maine, the entire east coast of the United States. And I've also investigated the gray man, which is some sort of nebulous Sasquatch-type creature that exists in the Highlands of Scotland. So I've been able to do research on two different continents on over quite a period of time. But even doing all that kind of research, I still have not had the definitive encounter that I've been seeking. I've talked to a lot of people. I've seen a lot of the terrain. I've seen what these ideas mean to the people that exist within that world. But I definitely do need to go to different places, which is the reason why I'm going to be branching out to the Pacific Northwest next year, so I can see what kind of photography, what kind of legends, what kind of myths exist out in the Pacific Northwest, and hopefully whenever I meet up with you, we will have an encounter together, which would be fantastic, and it would be a good chapter to the book.
Have you ever put it out there? Put it out to the universe that you wanted something to happen like that?
I have. And see, again, whenever I keep on talking about the idea of fairy, the world of the fae, whenever I put it out to the universe that I wanted something to happen was whenever these balls of light started to interact, which is why I keep on going back. There's some connection to another world, you know, in quotation marks, about what's going on. So I do believe that we can influence the environment around us by putting out good thoughts. You know, the thoughts that we have an energy. That energy has a life of its own once it leaves our bodies, and it can interact with other energy forms. I do believe that firmly. And I keep on putting these thoughts out there every time I go. And I do feel that these things are knowing them out there, that they're watching me, but they have yet to reveal themselves to me in the form of Bigfoot.
Would you believe we only have about 3.5 minutes left?
I know. I find it hard to believe that I look forward to this, you know, for one time a month. And whenever you talk about 3 hours, I keep on thinking whenever I go over the topic, oh, am I going to be able to fill up the 3 hours? But, you know, we could keep on going on for at least another couple hours. Your audience, again, should always be praised like I do, because they keep the ball rolling, don't they? They're not a quiet bunch. And they're always adding more fuel to the fire, and I love that. I love it, man. As a researcher and as a guest on your show, I really, really enjoy whenever these guys are putting together very intelligent questions. I've said this before. I've said it again. I do a lot of radio. You could not ask for a more intelligent bunch of people than your listeners.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And, we're adding new listeners on it every night here since we've joined Revolution Radio. So far, so good. They seem to be really pulling up their socks with some really good questions as well. But they're veterans of this. They've heard these types of shows before. I think our listeners, and I will say this with anyone, we may be a smaller number of listeners for right now, but we're gaining listeners on a nightly basis, and I hope they like what they hear, because we are a little bit different. We do probably some of the most interactive shows that are out there, and we really couldn't do it without them and without their experiences and their knowledge. So they really keep it going, and I think it's fun, man. I really do think
I
it's
agree,
fun.
man. You have the best job in the world.
Well, I think so. I just got to make it my own. I just got to figure out how to make it my only job.
That's me too, my friend. Me too. So that's going to be our goal. That's going to be our holy grail whenever it comes to the world of the paranormal. How we can just do this and not have to worry about anything else. Because if that was the case, I'd be out in the field all the time.
Oh, I know that feeling. I know that feeling all too well. I would love to get out more. You have to. It's funny. My neighbor Tony, who is sometimes pops in here, he'll knock at the window right before showtime, and I don't even know. Maybe he's listening. He knocks at the window right before showtime, coming in, and and up here we don't really lock our doors. So he brought beer tonight, so that's always a good sign. And basically, he, we were talking during one of the breaks. I'm like, dude, we got to set up like a team or something here. I know a lot of people who could give us some good advice to get out in the forest. My only problem with that is I just haven't gained the strength yet to buy a firearm for safety. Because up here it's a little bit more difficult than the 5 minutes it takes to get an AR-15 down there. But I'm not getting into the whole thing. But I mean, it's funny. Maybe we got to do one of those gun lot or those car lot things where if you buy a new car, you get a new gun. I don't know.
That's right.
But
yeah, and I thought about that too. I don't own a gun either, and I've often thought about that whenever I go into the woods, especially in places that have had reportings of something that was acting a little bit more ferocious towards people. I've often had that kind of feeling that I probably should have some sort of protection on me.
Yeah, well, you know what? Maybe we're not meant for it, my friend. Maybe we're not meant for it. Maybe we're just too damn good looking, and Bigfoot will just say, I can't mess with that. I can't mess with that. That's just way too pretty. Way too pretty for me.
That's right. Maybe we'll get some affections from a female Sasquatch, and then we'll have our own little stories to tell, wouldn't we?
Oh, that would be... That's eerie. That is eerie. I'm going to say that.
That is eerie. Yeah, but there's a report over there in Russia of an Almasty, their version of Bigfoot that was actually chained up in the middle of a village, and it was mated with by the town folk and produced an offspring. So this wouldn't be the first time something like that would happen.
Well, it's something that we have to do. Crypto Guru, I'm going to get you to hold on. Thank you so much, Ronald Murphy. Reminder, everybody, you can find Ron's books all over Amazon. He's an award-winning author and one of the most brilliant people that I have had the pleasure of chatting with on this show. Crypto Guru, thank you so much for being with us tonight on SOR.
Hey, thank you, my friend. We'll talk to you again in 1 month.
Exactly. What date is that? September 14th, second Wednesday of the month. I've already got it on the calendar. I've even got October on there, which will be the 12th. I'm way ahead.
Wow, fantastic.
I got to get you to...
How do your listeners pick the October topic? How does that sound?
Perfect. Listeners, you heard it. The Crypto Guru wants you to pick the topic for October, and we're going to run with it. Ron, you hold on. I got to clean this thing up, put it all away for another night. Ronald Murphy, our guest tonight on the mighty SOR. We're doing it all again tomorrow night. Zen Gardner is our guest. We are talking the Mandela effect. Is it Berenstain Bears or Berenstain Bears? We'll find out tomorrow night with Zen Gardner. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Thank you so much to everyone in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, and our new listeners at Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Appreciate you all giving us the opportunity to spend your valuable time with us. Thank you so much for being with me. I'm out of here. It's time for me to go away, to go home. It's time for me to call it the night. So, see you later. Have a good one.